ish. How do I say? I felt very challenged trying to find a neutral way to bring this to you.
Like my last story, or
Yeah.
like my next story for those
Mm-hmm.
listening. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
Well, then
we're
I
gonna
think
hop right into
just,
it.
yeah, and just give the disclaimer I gave of this might not come across as neutral as I hope.
Yes, yes. This might not come across as neutral as I'd hope. My opinions and my humanness is going to come through, obviously, as it always does, and it should, you know? However, being a part of the healthcare field, I got a lot of opinions. I also
Okay.
have a little yeah, it's just like religious trauma mixed in there. So are you ready to go back to about the 80s?
On Alter Ego, we explore the intersection of faith and fear, where the sacred meets the psychological and belief shapes culture. We discuss sensitive topics involving trauma and belief systems through an educational, ethical lens. Our intention is to bring understanding, openness, and curiosity, not sensationalism. Listener discretion is advised.
So today's content warnings, I actually did already text Heather about this. Between the two of us, only one of us has been pregnant. I felt like it was only fair to be like, hey, by the way, today we're going to be talking about some postpartum stuff,
Mm-hmm.
postpartum psychosis specifically, child death, and um, yeah, I feel like that covers everything. So yeah,
I wonder if I already know the case.
you do. I'm sure
Go
you do.
ahead.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty infamous.
Mm.
Um, have you ever heard of Andrea Yates?
Yep.
Yeah, I kept trying to force myself to figure out the flow of how this episode would go.
Mm-hmm.
And I really kind of alleviated that from because I could not get it to go, and do
Yeah.
exactly what I wanted it to do ultimately. So I broke everything down into three separate sections, but we'll kind of see how it goes, what comes up, and obviously find that organic, natural flow is fine
Cool.
because it is a really heavy topic. I will not be focusing really hardly at all on the child death itself.
Yeah.
And as we all know, if this is your first time listening, we do not focus on any details. You won't be having to worry about any graphic, any graphic detail or anything like that. This case specifically, I chose this. It is. I chose this because it feels like a really great intersection of everything.
Yeah.
And I actually got here by this was a branch off of another thing that I'm working on and doing, and that will be in future episodes. So it wound up being a branch off of something else. This case really examines this convergence of untreated postpartum psychosis combined with a high pressure religious ideology and a complete repeated failure of many systems, one of them the mental health system and also the medical system. There were, as you'll come to learn, many different instances where intervention was not only accessible, but I mean, it genuinely blows my mind after finding out all these details that warning sign grew into impossible to ignore factual, both visual and psychological evidence that
Mm-hmm.
this person should not have gotten it. This should have never happened
Yeah. It shouldn't have
and
gotten this far.
should have never gotten this far. So much failure. And really, I mean, it just brought me so much disbelief.
Mm-hmm.
So how we'll do this is we'll trace a few different forces. So over the course of 8 years, Andrea Yates went through 5 pregnancies,
Oh.
multiple hospitalization, discontinued and routinely changed antipsychotic medication.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll also take a look at the belief that all of this was steeped in. How much do you know about the belief systems that Andrea Yates and her husband were
I don't know
involved
the
in?
specifics of what they were, only that they were like a big driving force into like the kind of the penultimate moment here. But I don't know the specifics of the beliefs that they had.
So it was
I have my stress ball. Like, okie dokie.
Yeah, it was an environment that was steeped in sin, salvation, and maternal responsibility. This shaped the life and the unraveling of Andrea Yates and the unfortunate loss of all 5 of her and her husband Rusty's children. And we'll also take a look at how her family, her church, and all the influences, including the medical professionals around her, all missed and minimized the danger and this crisis that she was genuinely in for a prolonged period of time, and how all of this was completely preventable. And then later on, we'll also talk about warning signs. We're going to get into what postpartum psychosis looks like. We're going to talk about just as if you are a partner or a family member or a child of a friend. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the support system and the support systems that are systemically available, and also the things that you can do as far as supporting someone who may or may be going through this, ways to prevent it if you're already susceptible to something like this. So, just a general overview is that Andrea Yates was born in 1964 in Texas. And in 2001, as we already know, unfortunately, I guess we don't already all know this. Maybe I've already specifically said it. But in 2001, she drowned all 5 of her children in their family bathtub during a severe psychiatric crisis. Yeah. This part you know about.
Yeah.
Okay. Checking in with you, just based off of what I've said so far. What's coming up for you? How is it going? What's going on?
I don't want to get ahead of myself because I have a lot of opinions about staying medicated even through pregnancy and doing what's best for you, because that's the only way you can do what's best for your child. I mean, I have a lot of feelings. Yeah. I'm speaking a lot from experience as someone who was encouraged to stay on antidepressants while I was pregnant. I've seen plenty of women say like, I just found out I'm pregnant, so I'm going off my meds. And it's like, whoa. But I understand there's a lot of stigma. There's a lot of misunderstandings. And so I'm trying to like settle into your story and not jump to all these things that I want to immediately be like, let's soapbox for a while.
Yeah.
But also I'm sort of preparing myself too, because I know that it's so difficult. And this is something that I feel like is beginning to come up a lot. It's so difficult to hold space for the reality that someone can be a perpetrator while simultaneously being a victim.
Yes.
Even though it's very hard to feel sad for someone who ended the lives of especially children, but it's like, so those are, the feelings right now.
Yes, and that's important. All of that's important. And I welcome you interrupting me and intervening and asking questions and all of the things throughout this, because I'm not a mom. And I want to know, not only from you as one of my best friends, but from you as a mom, what in the world is coming up for you, if you feel comfortable sharing it, obviously.
Oh, sure.
I know you're usually not comfortable sharing how you're doing and what your
I'm very
opinion is.
private and reserved, yeah.
We're both very reserved, obviously, as we're publishing a
podcast where we just listen to ourselves talk.
Yes. It really challenges. You and I have different, I already know that you and I have different snags here, and that I am so familiar with this, I'm going to say like this level of treatment, but without going into too much detail. My earlier years, don't know why the system is, well, I do know why the system is set up this way. I am familiar with this type of stuff happening. This sounds so wacky to even say.
Your earlier years in your education.
Yes. So I've brought this up before in one of the earlier episodes, if not like our episode that's like Meet Your Hosts.
I think it's that one. Yeah.
Where I briefly mentioned that in my first internship in grad school, I did art therapy on a forensics unit of a psychiatric hospital. So I am familiar with this. I don't even know how to, I guess, like these things, these occurrences, or this
Well, the
level of
dichotomy
trauma,
of,
the
yeah,
confusion, and yeah,
yeah.
I'm more familiar with it. So like psychologically, I've compartmentalized it.
It's a little bit easier for you to like wrap your
It's
head around it
yes, and the
without
stuff,
emotion.
yeah, yeah, and then the stuff. I mean, it's obviously still like really distressing and upsetting. And I've also met someone who's literally done this.
Uh-huh.
So I am like, okay, in order for me to psychologically get through that,
Uh-huh.
I'm like, oh, I have to do these specific things in my brain. And then instead of me getting hung up on that part in this case, I'm like hung up on all of the things that propped it up and supported this happening. And I'm like, oh, wait, no, there's also still a like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah, I'm following.
Anyways, now I'm sweating. Um,
I'm just squeezing my stress ball.
we're
I'm
gonna take care of
fine.
ourselves while we do this, so
I'm
we can
ready.
take breaks. We can, so as we get started, we're gonna go ahead and lay out that there was a long documented history for Andrea Yates that did not come up until later on. So we're going to briefly touch on her earlier years, but she did not have any deeply troubling psychotic features, anything that would lead anyone to believe that she was psychologically unstable. In her earlier years, she actually was really well regarded, like higher in her class, like all the stereotypical things that whenever the media brings things up, they're like, they were well regarded in their community, and they were, high achieving, and blah 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 blah. So a lot of the media that I read was like that flavor. It's like,
Yeah.
we would have never known because she's so this, that, and the other. So
I don't plan to ever do anything that would put me on a
mhm.
news program or a
Mhm.
podcast or anything, but I do not want people to lie. Like, I don't want anyone to be
Mhm.
like, she was a pillar of the community. She lit up a room. I want people to be like, yeah, she was like pretty sarcastic and sometimes made people cry. But then once you understood her, it was like, she was a pretty good time. Like, I just tell the truth.
You want the earnestness of it all.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's paint a real picture here.
Yeah, let's paint a real picture. Yeah, I same, absolute same. She had a very long history over a few years, though. Once she got a little bit older and in her 30s, it wasn't until she started having children that she actually started showing signs of mental decline, just
Interesting.
mental distress, postpartum psychosis. It genuinely did not show up at all in anything that any medical record show.
Stopped
No,
you so many
please
times.
do. Yeah.
Can you explain the difference between general postpartum depression versus postpartum psychosis?
Yes. So it's just as much as depression and psychosis are different. So the postpartum part is just meaning, obviously after you
Mm-hmm.
have a child. Depression is more signs of, like a lack of executive functioning stuff. If feeling very uh, the word, what is the word,
Detached.
feeling anhedonia, yeah, very detached, not a lot of, not really able to feel your emotions, feeling very heavy, your autonomic nervous system is just like kind of shot out. And for psychosis is very much so presents itself very different. So it can be many different things. We're going to talk later about warning signs and things to look out for, but postpartum psychosis is things not necessarily grounded in reality, things that feel like very psychologically disturbing. So
Okay.
we could have hallucinations,
Uh-huh.
visuals, delusions, non-grounded, non-linear thinking, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And postpartum depression, there are definitely cases where postpartum depression is what is believed to have led to women in postpartum harming their child in one way or another. And it's very nuanced in each, it's case by case. And I also have a lot of like sensations and feelings around the diagnostic part of this.
Mm-hmm.
Because what winds up happening is that we're saying things like postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, and it really puts everything on the woman, the
Mm-hmm.
the parent, that, oh, you need to find a way to not be depressed, or you need to find a way to not do this or do that. And it's like, wait, no, I feel like it would be a lot more helpful if the framework was around more of like a communal mindset or community based, the support system, the family structure. What are things that can help support when this does happen,
Mm-hmm.
and approach it from that framework. But that's a whole other podcast that I could get into. So, with as much as we're going to be talking about diagnostic stuff today, so much of this also has to do with systemic failures, a lot of nuance around how we even got here. So, this incident happened in 2001. And between the late 90s and I guess like mid 90s and 2001, it was pretty acute. There were many different warning signs, and which included severe postpartum depression. So that was kind of like the initial happenings.
Mm-hmm.
There was also documented history of some sort of schizoaffective disorder symptoms, multiple suicide attempts,
Oh.
yeah, psychiatric hospitalizations, multiple, and then, as we were discussing, postpartum psychotic features, so levels of psychosis. Yeah, I also should definitely, content warning, there will be discussion of suicide and suicidality. This also too is a really taboo topic. A
Mm-hmm.
part of postpartum depression symptoms is suicidality and homicidality. Those
Yeah.
two things are also a huge part of this space we're exploring in postpartum. There's just so much taboo here.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to travel back. That happened in 2001. We know what happens now. How did it get to this point? Andrea's husband's name is Rusty. Rusty, we're going to kind of focus on him a little bit, and the church that they were involved in. Church I use as a loose term. Religious relationships. There's really not. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay.
It's enmeshed with religion, but not necessarily a specific church. So
Okay.
in the mid 1980s, Rusty meets a man by the name of Michael Vornecki. They meet at Auburn University in Alabama. So Rusty meets this traveling street preacher.
God.
Yeah, in college. Who he's preaching on campus. Rusty takes some of his literature, and they begin responding in the 80s by mail over the next several years. So this is the origin of the spiritual influence that will later sit in the background of
Okay.
the family's lives. Okay. So then in the late 80s, early 90s, Rusty and Andrea meet, they date, and they marry. So Andrea was a registered nurse at a cancer center. She meets Rusty at an apartment complex in Houston, in Texas. Allegedly, they move in together. This is widely reported in coverage in books and things like that about them, but not substantial. There's a lot of, also too, another thing, little asterisk here. There is so much unsubstantiated evidence and ungrounded opinion. There was so much noise around this case that I had to quite literally strip things down to
Uh-huh.
only factual, and then kind of build off of my opinions, things that were alleged, so it feels like we're kind of stripping it down to the bones here, and then we'll kind of add
Yeah.
things in as we go, because I think that was also the part of the reason why I had such a hard time putting all this together, is because
Because it's so sensationalized.
it's so sensationalized, and so much of this is, I'm like, wait, where did that come from? And then I go and I look, and I'm like, oh, it's just by secondhand account with someone who put it in an article, whatever, right?
Ugh.
Yeah. In 1989, Rusty introduces Andrea to Vornecki. They meet. Rusty arranges for the Vorneckis to visit, and supposedly, Michael Vornecki later says that Andrea seems shy and intimidated, and he advises them allegedly not to marry. I kept this in here because this feels important, because there is not a lot of information that I could find around just how involved Rusty and Michael were in each other's lives.
Yeah, because it seems like they're just having like a letter writing correspondence, right? But then he's obviously comfortable enough to advise, like, this is not the one for you.
Yeah, and they're visiting each other's
Yeah.
homes. They obviously have a relationship that is more than just mail correspondence. In April of 1993, my birth year, Rusty and Andrea get married. Over this time, these early years of them being together, they had planned that part of their lifestyle, part of their plan, part of what they were going to do together is that they were going to have as many babies as nature will allow. So that is part of their evangelical Christian following.
Okay.
And they describe themselves as devout. I'm going to just let that sit there. I'm just going to leave that there. This is where I want to take off and go in another direction.
Yeah.
But we're not going to get.
Do we know? I mean, obviously, okay, so we have, I keep wanting to call him Jason Voorhees. We've got Michael Warnecki, who's kind of acting as like spiritual advisor, teacher, whatever. But do we know, did they have like a church home that they were going to?
This is a really good question.
Thank you.
He and his wife, the Warneckis, were traveling preachers. Or preacher. He's a traveling preacher. So They had a bus that they would travel all over and preach at different locations, different colleges, I guess, I'm assuming, I don't know churches. I would assume churches. Like a traveling, which, by the way, I looked him up and he's still doing this.
Still going strong.
Yeah.
So, okay, so then Rusty and Andrea didn't have to really have a home base because their home base was mobile. So it was sort of like, if he's here, we're at that church.
You mean Michael and his wife?
No, I'm talking about
Rusty and Andrea are perceivably in Texas. They live in Texas.
Right, but did they have a home base, like church?
I don't know. There is no
interesting
consistent messaging around where they went to church because everything is focused on Michael's influence.
I'm only curious because not so much about like what's their specific belief, but more because one, if they're identifying as devout, that leads me to believe that probably they're in church anytime there's a service.
I was thinking, right.
But also, listen, sitting in a church does not make you any more a Christian than sitting in a garage makes you a car. Like that doesn't matter. You can be devout and not be in a pew. Mm-hmm. However, the bigger curiosity coming up for me is the same way as like when you get married, the whole idea is that your friends and family are there because they're sort of agreeing to help you two stay together. Like they're witnesses so that they can come together as your village, right? Mm-hmm. And you guys are having a hard time. We're going to help you get through it because we want you to keep that oath that you made to God. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking if they're devout and they want to, have all of these children, I would expect that they would have some sort of community, that's sort of holding them up. So it's just
that's
surprising.
Actually, so this is part of the problem with what in my opinion, partially what led to the amount of distress that Andrea was under is that she had no community.
Copy that. Okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So very isolated in the way that they wound up living their lives, we're kind of perfectly segueing into this. In the early 90s to late 90s, they had their first child by the name of Noah. And around that same time, Rusty accepted a job in, can you guess which state? Florida, Seminole. So they wound up moving to Florida. And they then so just to kind of trace the rapidness of this, in February of 1994, Andrea gave birth to their first child, Noah. December 15th of 95, she then gave birth to John, their second child.
Whoa.
Yeah. 96 and 97, they decided to move back to Houston and they purchased a motorhome.
Okay.
So this part also feels just something to note. Who do you think that they bought their motorhome from?
Not Jason Voorhees.
Yes. So they they went and bought the actual motorhome from. I've read motorhome and I've read bus. So take whatever reports say, whatever. They bought the bus slash motorhome from Michael and his wife, and they then lived out of with their two children out of this motorhome.
I am really not trying to make a joke. I truly
Uh-huh.
mean this. That would be enough to depress me.
Yes.
I am lucky to have some square footage in my house, and even sometimes that's too small to share with one child.
I know. Yeah.
It's so easy to get so touched out, especially in those very, very early months and years. And if you're going from pregnancy to pregnancy, you've got no time to like level set those hormones. I mean, holy cow. I would be so overwhelmed in many different ways.
I have lived in a motorhome for an uncomfortable amount of time. I think it was around 6 months, and I've never been more depressed in my entire life.
There's just
It was bad.
no.
It was a bad, dark time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now put 2 children and a partner in there.
I mean, I can't. Yeah, I'm also so interested to see, and also now I'm seeing too. I did not catch this while I was doing my notes, but there are two separate situations. There's a motorhome and there's a bus. That's why I was confused. So
Okay.
I'll clarify this here in a second. But to just travel down this branch for a second, there are so many families that have romanticized a mobile life online, this van life, which I was very intrigued by for a short period of time. I wanted to travel and live out of a bus or a van or whatever. It was like, oh yeah, we're going to do the thing. We're going to go convert the, to like do the stuff. That, it was just going to be me and a partner, not a whole family. Like, one, I understand. It's also this weird, I'm not going to, I won't rant too much about this. There are people who have to live out of a vehicle by survival.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm talking about, obviously. Then there are people who are like, we're going to sell our.
Yes, and buy a 6-figure, vehicle to convert. Yeah, very different.
And then we are going to take our kids and homeschool them and drive them around.
Totally different.
Whatever.
Different situations.
I have lots of opinions about that. Am I going to share them right now? No, but I also think it's very important that it overlaps with some sort of weird religious or evangelical. This was the early days of that, is basically what it feels like to me. It's like, this is pre-YouTube, pre-social media, pre all of those things. People were still out here doing it, which blows my mind, because then I'm like, you're not even making any money off of this. It's just like a whole other
You're
thing.
Just doing that for fun?
Exploiting your kids for money. Anyway, so to clarify, they bought a motorhome 96, 97, whenever they moved back to Houston. So then later on in 1998, they traveled back to see the Vornickis in Miami, and they were selling their motorhome. So Rusty bought a 1978 GMC bus from the Vornicki family and used it for preaching, that they had used for their preaching travels, and the Yateses stayed with them for about a week. So we're not talking about like just, obviously these families are like friends, they're close, they know each other. So I'm just super curious. I don't have any other information about their connection, their lifestyle, but I really want to know more about their relationship.
Yeah.
And what exactly was going on. So now we're going to move on to 1999. Okay, so between whenever they moved back to Houston and whenever they went to go visit the Vornickis in Miami, and whenever they bought their bus, they had their third child, Paul. I don't know if you're noticing some themes here with the names.
We've got some religious names.
Yeah, we've got Noah John. Third child, Paul. Paul was born in September of 1997. So then in 1999, fourth child, February of 1999, their fourth child by the name of Luke is born. Luke was born in February. His first psychiatric crisis is 1999, June of 1999. So Andrea calls Rusty at work and asks him to come home, and he finds her shaking in the floor crying. I'll spare some details here, but she was in a state of distress, deep distress, and was doing some odd physical things. So June 17th of 1999, this is where Andrea first attempts suicide, overdoses on trazodone that was prescribed to her for sleeping.
Okay.
And it was actually her father's medication.
Okay.
So then June 18th, a day later, obviously, it was around, probably I would imagine the same night, but that next day, for a week, she was then hospitalized and had her first psychiatric hospitalization.
Mm-hmm.
She was admitted to a psychiatric unit in Houston, and they diagnosed her with major depressive disorder, and she was discharged on June 24th. July 20th through the 21st. Here's where we're going to kind of just really run down everything that happened. So this is a timeline of psychiatric distress, again, without detail. July 20th, 1999, there was an incident where Andrea was at her mother's home and Rusty had to take a knife away from Andrea. She was attempting to do something harmful to herself with it, and she was begging to let her die.
Mm-hmm.
So July 21st, she was admitted again to a psychiatric facility, and this is her first prescription of Haldol, which, for those of you who don't know, is an antipsychotic. So this is her first experience being medicated with an antipsychotic prescription.
When she first had her hospitalization and was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, when she was discharged, she was just discharged? It wasn't like, hey, here's some antidepressants or here's a number to a psychologist or anything?
From my understanding, I will go back and double check, but it was pretty much like, okay, are you not gonna, I would imagine, this is my interpretation of what I read and what I'm understanding is that it was basically like, well, you're not gonna kill yourself anymore.
Yeah.
Bye.
Don't do that. Feel better.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I was just curious. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I would, in my opinion, if someone is diagnosed with major depressive disorder, they're going to put you on antidepressants. I don't have any evidence of that. Do not see that anywhere in any of the information that I have found. I don't know if she was on antidepressants or not. And then she also was prescribed Haldol, which is obviously antipsychotic. My assumption is that they put her on medication for antidepressants while she was in the hospital. Maybe they gave it to her to have afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Which, if we were to really explore that thread, depending on the type of antidepressant, I'm curious if that would have hurt or helped her symptoms. Because sometimes, as we all know, if you're misdiagnosed and then you're put on a type of medication, sometimes it could make your symptoms worse.
Yep.
I'm sure people have experienced that before.
Yep. And then it's very easy to go, oh, I don't like medicine. I don't want to be medicated. Yes. Medication sucks. And it's like, no. That medication sucked for you. There are other options. But again, it's like you can't just take a prescription and then move on with your life. But you have to do the footwork. And that also includes, if you have access to it, because of course I'm speaking from a place of privilege here, having a therapist or at least having a primary doctor that you trust who is willing to, prescribe things. It's a whole thing. But yeah, and it's terrible now. So I mean, I know it was worse in the 90s and even worse in the 80s.
Can you imagine in 1999, whenever someone came in who, especially a woman, is like, I do have here underlined that she was on multiple medications by the time she was taking Haldol.
Yikes. Okay.
So we don't know exactly what or how much, but we can confidently say multiple medications. Okay. August 9th through the 18th of 1999. She was discharged from her second psychiatric facility inpatient experience. She then started daily outpatient care with actually, I don't want to say that because I don't know if that's the case. But she then started daily outpatient care. So she was then seeing a psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Eileen Starbranch, who tells the couple that having another child could trigger another psychotic episode, and notes in the chart that, quote, apparently patient and husband plan to have many babies as nature will allow. This will surely guarantee future psychotic depression. So in 1999, they're calling it psychotic depression in these notes.
Ay,
Mm-hmm. So late 1999, accounts describe that Andrea has what's considered to be a nervous breakdown, where she has had two suicide attempts, two psychiatric hospitalizations in the summertime, and then that then culminates with a diagnosis of postpartum psychosis. So obviously this is a huge systemic failure because at this point, despite the warning of not having more children, neither the medical system nor Rusty treat this as a hard boundary, and their stance to have more children stays in place. So,
okay. I'm trying very hard not to speculate on anything there.
Yes. January 12th of 2000 is discharged from her psychiatrist's care per medical record notes cited in their trial coverage. I don't know why in the world she was discharged from this psychiatrist's care, but she was. Approximately 7 weeks after this discharge, Andrea conceives Mary, their fifth child, despite Star Branch's clear warning. And in March of 2000, assuming because she conceived Mary, she stops taking Haldol. And obviously, this later is understood as a major factor in the further destabilization of her psychological well-being.
I'm going to jump on a quick soapbox here.
Uh-huh.
There are some medications that are not safe to take while pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are also plenty of antidepressant, antipsychotic, multiple things, medications that are safe to take during pregnancy.
Yes.
Please, if you are listening, do not ever take yourself off any medication without talking to your doctor, period, full stop. But please, please, if you want to have life inside of you, do not make the executive decision to cold turkey stop something that has, up until this moment, seemingly helped you in some way. Do not do it. If you want to get off it, that's totally fine. But you have to make a plan with your doctor. Please.
Yeah, so just from a quick Google search, it says that Haldol's safety in pregnancy is not definitively established and it is only recommended when the benefits clearly outweigh the risks.
Which I would say would be here.
We would say here, especially obviously on this side of things, we know what happened and what could have happened. It is really hard for me, and this is really challenging and I have a whole section on Rusty, I have a whole section on Michael. So we'll explore this space of the perfect recipe of what combined with these psychiatric crises to amplify everything that was going on. Not only was Andrea experiencing these instances, but there were environmental factors, there were a predisposition that is assumed that it for many different reasons. And one thing that is a huge contributing factor here, in my opinion, is that Michael Vorniecki had a very specific belief system, and he had a ministry. So he founded his ministry. It was called the Cornerstone Christian Fellowship. He from then had shifted into the street preaching ministry type stuff that he did with his wife and his child. And that is when they were living in their bus and prophesying out of this in this mobile way. His preachings strongly emphasized hell judgment and that the world was going to hell. He preached that most churches were false and could not save people. And that there was this need to be truly born again and be radically separate from worldly life.
Okay, so we've seen this before. They're all wrong. I have the one true answer. Follow me and you'll be saved. This is like cult mentality 101. Did he have any children?
Yeah. He does.
How many? ¿Cuántos?
I don't know how many children he has. More than one. It's because it says children plural. So also too, both Rusty and Michael deny any. Rusty does not hold anyone accountable. Michael is was is quoted denying responsibility. That this has anything to do with his teachings or belief system, and also Rusty as well, which we'll get into a little bit later. There is no denying. What I'm inviting is just a noticing of environmental factors here. Former followers and a defense psychiatrist describe his influence as hellfire focused and heavily guilt inducing, especially around sin, selfishness, and the danger of eternal damnation. As I said, he obviously denies responsibility, arguing that it's deceitful and irresponsible to blame doctors, hospitals, or postpartum depression, and suggests that instead that it's the issues. The issues were much deeper.
So that's a wordy way of saying it's all her fault. Okay.
Yeah. So his theology, obviously, I'm not saying causes psychosis. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that it provides a very high pressure, fear based, spiritual content for someone who is predisposed to having mental distress. There's some stuff to latch on to for the psyche to really use as content. And that's where we kind of transition over into a little bit of conversation around what are the contributing factors that could possibly be part of this psychosis. So as we're already playing around with, there is some stuff that makes someone, we don't exactly know what Andrea was predisposed to. We don't know her family history. We don't know if she had any experiences, maybe as a younger adult, that she never disclosed. However, it didn't help that her husband likely believed that she was depressed and not psychotic, and that he did not fully grasp the lethality of her symptoms and assumed that home and routine were better than hospitalization.
And probably medication. And this is a broad assumption. And I know that I'm just making an assumption, but I mean, even the other day I passed a church whose sign said like anxious, depressed, services Sunday 10 a.m. And it's like, ooh, whoa, huh? And this idea that like if you're anxious or depressed, it's because you don't have enough God in your life.
Yes, that's a very common, easily assumed stance based off of this style of preaching and this style of belief system. Part of what afterwards, through both Andrea's confession and multiple sit-down Atticus interviews, whether it was with a psychiatrist, with a therapist, whoever, it is reported that Andrea believed that she was a terrible mother. She believed that her children would grow up and be sinful, that she believed that killing them would save them from damnation, and that obviously it is important here to note that these things are all characteristics of religious psychosis. And something really important here to note is that a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times whenever people are experiencing psychosis, their psyche uses what is the most accessible and familiar belief systems as the content to fuel their psychosis. So I would imagine that some shame-based motherhood ideals also did not help, where it is believed that motherhood is framed as this moral battlefield, that feelings of spiritual failure are obviously intensified with psychotic guilt here. There are also considerations of faith-based hesitation to seek, as you're speaking to, medical help. So interpreting mental illness as a spiritual crisis, or that it's God's intervention, right? Things like praying, I would imagine, are coming up here. And preference for religious framing over psychiatric crisis response is something that, again, was a contributing factor here. And their fundamentalist preachings, this influence around hell, sin, parental responsibility for children's salvation, and these strict gender roles, is obviously very guilt-ridden and fear-based. And all of these things are contributing factors that help shape something like delusions, religious psychosis, stuff like that. You're having go ahead. Yeah.
Are they still living in like an RV at this point?
From my understanding, yeah.
I just, again, I'm trying really hard not to just like take off with a lot of soapboxes and inputs and feelings. But it's like this woman was only in her marriage, only not pregnant for what, a year?
Maybe.
It sounded like, I think, in your
Maybe,
timeline.
yeah.
And it takes about 2 years for your hormones to level
To recover.
postpartum. And I'm also thinking that I had a doula, and something that she said a lot that I really liked was, you are always postpartum. From the time that you have a child, you are postpartum the rest of your life.
Forever
and
and
it's
always.
like,
Yeah.
that's true. That keeps coming up for me. But the thing is I'm thinking about Carrie, Stephen King's Carrie, right? Of like, go to your prayer closet and pray. Like, I don't want you to be a sinful child. And, I'm thinking about a good friend of mine whose mom cried when we went to see Twilight because she felt like it was sinful that we were going to participate in this movie.
Wow.
And, it is not rare for these feelings and beliefs to exist. But if you have these feelings and beliefs and you're not getting the treatment that you deserve, and you're not getting the support at home that you need,
or from community.
Yeah, if you're just like isolated, and again, it makes so much sense. I'm playing a little bit of tug of war here with some of this testimony, in the sense that you created the greatest sin according to God, which is murder, in an effort to allegedly save them from sin. But of course, we know that psychosis, as you explained, is not like logical thinking.
Yeah. Of course.
I'm also thinking that, per the Bible, your husband comes before your children. So I'm wondering how that relationship was going. And I'm also wondering if they're still in a fucking bus. Because I'm like, this is...
Yes. And that's part of, I made a very extensive list of all, and we've been playing around in this space. I've been popping back and forth between my list and the timeline of all the contributing factors of what led to this. And down, I think it's like towards the bottom, is environmental factors. Obviously, the isolation and the distress that this caused to be. And here I am sitting here thinking, I'm like, by the time that they're in 2001, if this sounds so fucked up and like logical without the attention to the severity of the situation. I'm like, if you've got usually you don't have a bathtub in a motorhome.
You might, though, in an RV, which is more what
like
I'm picturing.
If it's like a larger, maybe so.
I mean, either way, I'm sure they're in a relatively small space with that many children and each other. And I also want to say that I do not have an issue if you truly and sincerely want to have babies until you can no longer have babies. Your body, your choice, works in all directions, right?
Totally.
You can totally do that if that's what you want to do. But I just wonder if that's really what she wanted to do. Because I saw a woman the other day on Instagram who's in her 50s and having her 12th child.
Girl, what?
She's got grandbabies that are younger than the child she's about to have.
Heather,
and it's like,
what? At what point does it become...
Well, but it was a whole thing, right, where she was getting a ton of backlash of people being like, this is so not okay. And her saying, God has blessed me and my husband with abundant children. And look at all of our babies. And it's like, you know what? End of the day, just like somebody terminating a pregnancy, it didn't impact me. It's not for me to have an opinion on, right? Like, your body, your choice, my body, my choice. Like, I wanted a baby, so I went out and did it on my own. You don't want a baby? I get it. It's a lot of work. Like, you want to have 100 babies? Good luck, girlfriend. But it's like,
at what point does it cross over into the threshold of being unethical if you're going to bring life into the world?
Yeah. And
it's a tricky, slippery.
I just don't know that I buy that they were making a joint decision of, let's keep doing this.
So this is okay. We're gonna talk about Rusty for a little bit.
Let's talk about Rusty.
See, this is why I was like, it doesn't have to be in concrete. Whatever way do we go?
Let's see what comes up.
I
don't trust him.
So I had a really hard time approaching Rusty from a neutral space. He was a NASA computer engineer. If that tells you anything about maybe the way that his brain worked. So obviously their marriage follows, as we've been discussing, this traditional, a very gendered hierarchical role. The husband leads, as you're describing, the wife is the primary caregiver, but some things are partially supported, some things are interpreted here. This is basically the game that Heather and I play every episode. Is okay, this is my interpretation. This is my opinion. So what
Especially Jerry.
yeah, I'm like, well,
I'm just here.
Heather's here. We do know that Andrea stopped working and became a full-time mother. As we know, she was a nurse practitioner.
Which, listen, you know what? Financially makes way more sense than her working. Truly.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Don't blame
of
her a
course.
bit. I mean,
So-
hate that she, maybe if she lost some independence there, I don't know how she felt
Also,
about it, but
can you imagine going through? I have watched multiple friends go through nursing school. You go through nursing school and then you just are like, actually, I'm going to not be a nurse anymore and I'm going to be a full-time mom. It's like, which one's harder?
I was going to say, I mean, like the traumas persist.
It's
You're
like,
still getting thrown up on a lot.
yeah, it just is so like what a difficult thing to have. I mean, it's just so much work. This woman never had a break, it seems. She literally never had a break. I mean,
Yeah.
for any of you who don't know, nursing students, I'm like, how do you not go through a psychotic episode as a nursing student?
You're treated like crap.
Yes.
Like
trash.
even when you are a nurse, you're treated like crap. You're spoken to like you're nothing. And a lot of times you're doing most of the work. I mean,
it's again, another circumstance of a very broken system where people are exploited for their labor. Yeah.
I'm so tired for everyone in this story.
Yeah. So much work, consistent, full-time. So she stops being a nurse practitioner. She goes into being a full-time mom. They homeschool their children. So not only is she being a mom, she's homeschooling.
She's never alone.
I wrote that down. I literally, in the list of contributing factors, no time to restore.
You're never alone.
Never alone.
As an independent parent to a singular child, I feel like I'm never alone. But of course I am, right? I have the opportunity to have help and to say, I'm going to go to a yoga class, or I'm going to go to spin class, or I'm just going to walk out the door for a minute. You have enough help that you can
do that.
Walk away for a minute. I know he went through I think he went through a regression every month. He's still not a good sleeper and he's 4. But at 11 months, it was the hardest it's ever been. And I really and truly was like, I think I might hit my wall here. Like, I don't know. I don't trust myself right now to be alone with him because he won't stop screaming and shrieking. And it's like nonstop and it's so loud and it's in my face. I had, thank God, one of my dearest friends. She knew that I was going through it. She came over unannounced. She said, I could hear him screaming as soon as I got out of my car. And I said, uh-huh. And she said, go away. And I did not question. I just said, okay. And I went and I just sat on my back porch and I cried for a while. Yeah. I think I pulled up a YouTube video and just tried to I could still hear him, right? I mean, he would stop screaming, but at least someone else could go deaf while I took a break.
Yes.
And it was just that of it didn't fix anything, right? It didn't put it away or make it better, but it gave me a minute to sort of shake my nervous system back into place and go, okay, we're not going to shake the child, right? Yes, we're not going to do anything that we can't come back from, right? And that's the thing is, I don't think that enough moms talk about those moments and about how you don't have to be going through a depression or a psych episode to sometimes look at even your baby and go, what have I done? That's normal. That's normal.
Totally.
I mean, and I remember saying that to a new mom and she looked at me and she started crying and she said, you used to feel that way too? And I said, oh, babes, everyone has felt that. But she couldn't believe it because, too many people are like, oh, it gets better. Everything's fine. And it's like, that's true.
Yes.
But you also need to talk about, more. I think that way more people need to get way more honest about how hard the hard times are.
Yes.
Because otherwise you feel like you are doing something wrong when you're like, no one talked about this. Has no one ever done this? I'm doing something wrong for this to be my reality. And it's like, no, they just don't nobody shares. Everybody gatekeeps the bad stuff. And
it's taboo to talk about the fact that you're not a happy to be here mom.
mm-hmm.
The sleep deprivation alone, not to mention all of the hormonal changes, all of the physical trauma, mental trauma. I have heard more trauma birthing stories than I can
I almost
possibly
died.
fathom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I had to go into emergency surgery.
You had
Yeah.
to, I mean, there's just so much trauma that the body goes through. And then you're supposed to be happy about it.
Yeah, you're supposed to come out and you're supposed to be cute and skinny and glowing and look at my perfect baby. And no.
Imagine all of that with the added pressure of I am responsible for my children's salvation. I am responsible for if I'm not a good mom, then there's just
I can't even get my child to eat a vegetable. I can't imagine feeling like it's on me to make sure that he is repenting on the daily.
In a bus.
That's the title of this episode. In a bus.
In a bus. So
Rusty.
We're going to talk about Rusty for a little while. As we know, he met Michael Voroniecki at Auburn University. They stayed in contact. Something that feels okay, yeah, this is what we were talking about before, is that what we do know is that, Andrew stopped working, Rusty worked full time. Another specific language here around this like patriarchal hierarchy that I mentioned is an interpretation, obviously, based on patterns Rusty himself nor Andrea were like self-identified as like this was this hierarchical role that we follow, but based off of their lifestyle, that is what was happening, obviously. It's very gendered structure. So perceivably, what we witness over time is that the Yateses, Rusty and Andrea, that they modeled their life after the Vorneckis. They even bought their bus, as we know. They named all of their children biblical names, and they had home Bible study and homeschooling. All of this is documented. It is unsure, or it's uncertain that they consciously modeled, or that Rusty consciously, specifically Rusty, consciously modeled his family after Michael's. That's obviously just speculation here. And nobody actually says that that's exactly what was happening. So obviously there was some influence, and Rusty later told the media that the relationship wasn't that close and rejected the idea that Voroniecki caused Andrea's delusions, calling it media created fiction. So there was obviously real contact and some alignment in their lifestyle choices, but Rusty publicly downplays how influential all of that was. Which,
yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah. So, as we know, Rusty heard Dr. Eileen Starbranch's advice. Warning to not have any more children. And that it may trigger another it wasn't even like it may. It was pretty definitive that this likely will trigger another psychotic episode. And they did it anyways within 7 weeks. So within 7 weeks of her discharge. It
almost feels intentional, doesn't it?
I really tried to not go that route.
Sorry,
and
I
was trying to figure out what their belief was about birth control. I can
most of the time, birth control's a no-no.
I can imagine, especially based off of their circumstance, that's not something that was an option.
Well, religiously speaking, sex is for procreating only, not for pleasure.
Yeah. So I've definitely heard that before. So Rusty later on said that he wasn't told that she was psychotic and would not have had more children if he had known. This is media reported. Rusty told the media that he was never told that she was psychotic or a danger to the children, and that if he had known, that they would not have had more children. That's what he told the media. It's right, super confusing. Again, this is one of those things I had to like strip down and be like, okay, this is contradicting. I'm super confused. There's also a claim that Andrea told a prison psychiatrist that she told Rusty that she did not want to have sex because the doctor said that it might hurt the children, and that he then responded with religious procreation language, quote, "The Lord told us to go forth and multiply," et cetera, et cetera.
I am confused about everything that just came out of your mouth. Okay.
Yeah, and this claim is supported by a doctor by the name of Melissa Ferguson's. Her notes quote Andrea Yates saying this in an article summarizing their sessions. So obviously, there's a contradiction between Rusty's public claim and Andrea's later reports. And I just am curious where you land on that.
I'll be honest. I can give a little bit of benefit of the doubt in the sense that he does not strike me as the type of partner that would not be all up in her business and be talking to the doctors and saying, you know, tell me everything.
Totally.
However, he also doesn't strike me as someone supportive. So I'm also, because of course I'm projecting that like he would be there when she's at these sessions, or he would be there when she's at the hospital. And I actually have no reason to think that other than that's what I would do.
Totally.
And that's not real.
Yep.
Because likely he would have to be with the children, I would think. So probably he wasn't there. So there's certainly opportunity for her to come home and say, yeah, they said I'm doing really well, or I'm doing better.
Right.
And that's it.
Like
we don't know.
Especially too, you have to, like, I couldn't help but think about the fact that this woman is in active psychological distress. First of all, not a reliable narrator as to what happened or what is currently going on while she was in it, right? So I couldn't help myself being like, yo, Rusty, hello.
Yeah, but I think unfortunately it's such a moot point because
yeah, I mean, this was also 2000.
Well, but you also have no insight into if he even took that seriously. Because I mean, he could have been home praying with the kids, saying, "We just have to pray, and Mommy's going to feel better."
And what a systemic failure that at no point in time is there a definitive plan for this woman. There's never like a, hey, here is the plan. Here, there doesn't seem to be an ethical pass off and plan from one person to the next, right? Later on, it seems like it happens, but it's not until way too late that it's just such a systemic failure, and that there was never a plan put in place to support this woman through. There's these warnings, these, you know, heed this warning, don't have another child, but there's no, perceivably no plan as to what to do. Also, at what point do you say, hey, you should not be around your children, period? Which we're going to kind of get to, but this, yeah. So obviously, if we were to hop back into the timeline, we're still around in March. She has Mary. This is her fifth child, her fifth and final child. And she initially seems somewhat stable. She had stopped taking her Haldol in March of 2000 that had significantly reduced her psychosis. In November of 2000, she has Mary, and discontinuing her antipsychotics, a woman who is known to have postpartum psychosis and suicidality without a strong replacement or a plan, like I was saying, or any kind of monitoring is obviously extremely risky. So while she's pregnant, everything seems fine. But obviously, the problem is postpartum, as we have witnessed in 2001, March of 2001. Unfortunately, Andrea's father passes away. This is a deeply emotionally, obviously distressing stressor, and she stops taking all of her medication. I don't know what exactly she was on, but she stops all of that. She becomes severely depressed and disorganized. She stops feeding the baby, Mary. She starts, trigger warning, self-mutilating. She starts reading the Bible obsessively, and she shows profound functional decline. Several weeks later, April 1st, 2001, she's hospitalized under the care of psychiatrist Dr. Mohammed Saeed, and she's treated and discharged relatively quickly. May of 2001, this is all starts happening in pretty drastic succession. In 2001, she has a rapid deterioration again. She becomes near catatonic. Fills the bathtub up in the middle of the day. She later tells the police that she intended to drown the children that day, but she couldn't go through with it.
Oh.
May 4th, 2001, she's hospitalized again. Her psychiatrist believes the tub was about self-harm, had nothing to do with harming the children. And here we have another systemic failure. And after repeated brief hospitalizations for a woman who has been known to have has active psychosis, active suicidality. She has now emerging thoughts of harming her children.
Or at least herself.
Or
Because
at least
certainly
herself.
if she didn't say anything, I still would think, and listen, you're the psychologist here, I still would think that they would have to go, uh-oh, red alarm.
Uh-huh.
It's a risk now that, let's say that's all she planned to do.
Yeah.
That would still leave the children without their mother.
Yes.
Unsupervised, which is still dangerous.
It's still dangerous for her to be. Yeah. So
what are we doing?
They had no longer more intensive inpatient or residential treatment.
Oh my God.
Planned for her. So part of the frustration here is that Rusty later reported that hospital staff seemed ashamed whenever they discharged her. And he said it was believed that they knew that she was still too sick to go home, but insurance limited her stay to 10 days.
I wondered where insurance was in this story. I wondered if they had it. I wondered about a lot of that, because even when you were like, I have no idea why they stopped her ongoing daily visits, that was my first thought. But then I thought, well, maybe they're not even doing this with insurance, but okay.
Yeah. So insurance is obviously involved. At some point, it is said that she had started Haldol. This is an assumption, is that she started Haldol back after she had Mary, and then she stopped it when her father died. That's what my understanding of what happened is. And she stopped Haldol, and maybe in and out of these hospitalizations too. Obviously, all this stuff gets so confusing. And even for me, having clients and seeing people who are in and out of hospitalization. I mean, the medication, they basically medically lobotomize you when you go inpatient. And then when you're outpatient, it's like, first of all, you don't even know what you were on whenever you were inpatient. And then what's the insurance cover? What are they prescribing you in outpatient? Whatever. So it is reported that they kept her on a high dose of antidepressants, Effexor, and stopped her Haldol, or that maybe she stopped it. Anyways, that's a big no-no. To be on a high dose of antidepressants and then not, again, I'm not a psychiatrist and I'm not responsible for medicating people. And I have very minimal knowledge about medication, but what I do know is that you don't put somebody on a high antidepressants who is actively psychotic in and out of the hospital, and you stop their antipsychotics. So whether it was her decision or not.
And quick reminder here that the medication speaks. So I'm sure that even when she is being taken off this stuff, even if it's like without any sort of weaning, the effects would still linger there for a little while.
Right.
Which would then also make her and probably her husband go, oh, see, that's not actually doing anything. You're no different.
Yeah, I actually don't know. I'm going to look up how long Haldol stays in the system, because I don't actually know.
I think a lot of it depends, too, on how long you've been taking it. Because even if it's like an extended release and it's like 24 hours, if you've been taking it for years, I mean, it's still kind of...
Yeah, half-life time in the system, chronic use. Yeah, whether it's injected or whether it's orally taken. There's a lot of different effect. There's a lot of different factors here. So
yeah.
Also, depending on if it was injection in the hospital, there's just so many different directions this could have gone that we don't know the details about. So we're gonna go through the rest of this rapid decline, and then we're gonna get into a little bit about signs, symptoms, warning things, just postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis in general, some supports, things like that. I have more details about Rusty and Michael, but honestly, it's stuff that we can just kind of skip over. obviously, the discontinuation of her Haldol was it put her at a very high risk of any kind of relapse. There's this discontinuation of his medication that doesn't really have any. We don't really know where the source of this discontinuation is. Whether it's, it seems the way that it's reported is that it was clinical. It was a clinical decision, and then it was and yet again another aspect of the systemic failure. However, I don't actually know if that's true or not. It's just that that's the way that it has been put in media. So now we're getting around towards the final days, June 18th of 2001. Now, mind you, her last discharge was May 4th of 2001, where she told the inpatient clinicians that she had filled up her tub and wanted to harm her children. They released her, and on June 18th of 2001, the family sees Dr. Saeed just 2 days before the drownings, and he does not hospitalize her. Now, I am not going to blame the doctor here. We don't know how she was presenting. She might have been like, hey, look, I'm fine. She might have also been actively in psychosis. We don't know. Her psychiatrist had told Rusty to not leave her alone with the children. Don't leave her alone with them. Don't do it.
I'm making a face.
Heather's making a face. So on June 20th, 2001, Rusty leaves for work, leaving Andrea alone with all five
with the children.
With their children.
Like immediately.
So reports state that whether this is, again, this is one of those things where I'm like, okay, we don't know. This is just by secondhand report. It is reported that he told family members that he was trying to basically soft launch trusting Andrea again with the children.
Good night.
And that they were going to be doing trial runs in the morning for an hour between the time he leaves for work and an hour later, Andrea's mother was going to come. So there's this hour buffer. So they said,
don't leave her alone, period. And he heard, we're going to do this incrementally.
We're going to just trust. And yeah, I'm not going to add any thing in here, but I can only speculate and imagine. So in the hour that he left for work and Andrea's mother was supposed to come, she drowns all five of their children one by one. I'm not going to go into the details of what happened there, but it seemed pretty ritualistic, and obviously it was we know if someone is killing their children, they're not mentally well. There is further evidence, not only her account of her harming the children, but the way that she did it was, in my opinion, perceivably is a ritual of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
So she drowns them one by one, and then she calls 911 and asks for an officer. She doesn't tell them why, but she says, I need someone to come. And she also calls Rusty, tells him to come home. Again, spare you all the details of all of that. Well, so I actually just found a little note that I put that the Haldol was tapered off by Dr. Saeed. So psychiatrist,
okay, it was tapered. Okay.
Yeah. So Dr. Mohammed Saeed tells Rusty to have Andrea taper off of Haldol over the next 3 days, and she remains under his care without.
I bet they didn't.
Antipsychotic. Yeah. Well, even then, I'm like, oh, why would you? Tell someone.
Take care of it, husband.
Yeah. So obviously, as we know, there's supposed to be around the clock supervision. Andrea later tells a jail psychiatrist that she was considering killing the children for 2 years, believing that they were doomed spiritually and that killing them young would allow God's mercy.
Can you remind me how old the oldest one is at this point?
7.
Okay, go on.
She also tells prison psychiatrist Dr. Melissa Ferguson that before Mary's conception, she told Rusty that she didn't have sex. So reiterating here at that point that she was like, yeah, I was told that I might hurt my children if I have another child. And Rusty later tells journalists that he was never told that, as we stated before. And Andrea later on goes on to tell her psychiatrist and her therapist and patient that she did this because she was saving her children. And I think that this is a really important note, that this is a very common thing in psychosis, is that a lot of times an action in psychosis is obviously based off of what at that time that person is feeling, thinking, seeing, hearing, experiencing. And there she in her state genuinely believed that she's saving her children, which is really psychologically hard to even it's hard to sit with, because obviously, as we started off in the front at the top from the get, right, it's like, okay, this is first of all unimaginable, and then to throw in that, oh, she thought she was saving her children, and she is influenced by teachings that are telling her that she's responsible for her children's salvation. A mother can corrupt her children's souls. A bad mother brings shame to God, right? So she's also in this weird structural trap. And her belief in her environment taught her that motherhood is a woman's highest purpose. A good mother sacrifices endlessly. And that mental illness, again, we're seeing this theme: mental illness is spiritual failure. Obedience to God and a husband is central. Suffering can be holy. And these conditions create an environment where asking for help feels like a moral failure. Rest is selfish. Psychiatric symptoms are reinterpreted as spiritual warfare, and women feel responsible for their family's spiritual destiny. And this psychosis is focused on the idea that she was a bad mother and that her children would be damned because she was a bad mother. And this is the ultimate manifestation of that. And yes, she confesses to everything. She says that she did it to save her kids. And unfortunately, 5 children were taken from the world, and many other lives were changed and lost because of it. You know, it's just this whole, obviously, deeply
Unavoidable tragedy.
yes, deeply unavoidable tragedy.
It's so it's hard. I mean, we said from the top that it was going to be hard. It's hard because there's also that part of me that wants to be like, or you just felt really trapped where you were and you wanted out, and it was obvious that you felt like if your kids weren't there anymore, you could get out. And it's like, well, maybe there's a little bit of that that's true, but that doesn't negate all the stuff that you've just taken the last almost 2 hours to take us through, right? Like,
yeah. So in 2002, she was initially convicted of capital murder and she was sentenced to life in prison. And then in 2006, 4 years later, she had a retrial and she was found not guilty due to reasons of insanity. And then she was sent to a high control psychiatric facility.
That's what I was going to say.
She was in prison for 4 years, or longer than that, for several years before she was sent to a psychiatric.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So doesn't seek release. I didn't even look up to see. I would imagine if she's still, I mean, it's been 20 years. So she's probably, I would imagine, still alive. So
when you're found not guilty by reason of insanity, and then you go to psych, is it like a forever kind of thing, or is it a
depends
until we decide that you can be kind of reintegrated into society? Or
it depends on what level you're on. It depends on how you respond to treatment. I mean, the psychiatric facilities that I've been privy to are definitely not set up for rehabilitation, even though that they say they are in some instances. I don't think that there's anything about the environment that I participated in that's rehabilitating. If anything, it's perpetuating the experience and the harm. But it's one of those things that's like, what the fuck else systems are put in place? This is just like from the jump. I mean, you can talk about predisposition, you can talk about socioeconomic status, you can talk about, I mean, there's just so much stuff here, but it depends. I've seen where people would be, if they were to go to prison, they would be sentenced for, depending on what state they're in. And again, the judicial system, how good is your lawyer? There's, what if you take a plea deal? There's just so many different aspects of that. And then if you're sent to a psychiatric facility, it depends on your treatment team, how you're part of your, if there is a trial, if it goes to trial, part of what you're sentenced to. I would imagine, I don't know, and this is obviously state by state again, there can be appeals put in, but if you're sentenced to say 10 years in a psychiatric facility, you're staying for 10 years, if not more. Is
Yeah, it's not
my
like an appeal process where you can be like, I think maybe I'm cool now. Yeah.
I definitely think that you can appeal just like legally. But I've never known anybody to, I mean, they have frequent meetings and things, and they have frequent, every, what is it, like few years or something, that they will revisit cases and things like that to see where people are at. But it's definitely case by case. So I don't know how long her sentence is or would be, but we're going to briefly touch on how postpartum psychosis develops and what signs to look for before we part ways. So, it's like specifically postpartum psychosis is pretty rare. It affects about 1 in 2 in 1,000 births. I don't think that that's very rare.
Doesn't sound like it.
One in 1,000.
I mean, it's it sounds like 1,000 sounds like a lot of people, but it's like, well, we have 1,000 Instagram followers. That means 2 of them are going to experience it.
Right.
That feels like a lot.
Yes. Yes.
You know?
Exactly. It's for us to not ever be talking about it. I think it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Doesn't seem that rare.
Yeah.
It's not like 2 and 3 million.
No, it feels much more frequent than you would expect. It's very different than something like the baby blues, which would be accompanied to, postpartum depression or anxiety. The typical onset is within a few days up to 2 weeks after someone gives birth. And then it can develop any time in the first couple of months postpartum. It starts with insomnia, agitation, and a feeling of being weird, even whenever you're not exhausted.
So not exactly easy to like self-diagnose,
Right.
Because that's how you feel.
Exactly. So some of the core features are severe confusion, rapid mood swings, hallucinations, delusions, fixed false beliefs that are often either religious or persecutory, grandiose, or catastrophic.
Because I mean, everything except for those last 3 is sincerely what you feel, period.
Just in general. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, I just had a friend who had a baby, and she told me she hallucinated while she was still in the hospital. And I'm like, oh my God, that's, first of all, that's terrifying. And second of all, that seems like, she's like, yeah, I just hallucinated that there was a man standing at the foot of my bed. It's like,
well, was it a hallucination though? Or, I mean, maybe he was just there.
I mean, that's true. That's very true.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, like those seem like maybe they should come at the top of the list of symptoms. But anyway, go on.
No sleep, significant changes in behavior, thoughts of self-harm or harming the baby. And we've literally already talked about this.
Yeah.
So, people in postpartum psychosis often believe that they're protecting their baby from inside psychotic delusions. The act can feel like a love or responsibility, as was stating earlier, not cruelty. And this means that it makes it so different from intentional or non-psychotic violence. Here's some risk factors: personal or family history of bipolar disorder, past postpartum psychosis, as we've discussed throughout this entire case, severe depression with psychotic features or schizoaffective disorder, sudden stopping of mood stabilizers or antipsychotics around pregnancy or birth, and then major losses or stressors such as a death in the family. So she really was like hitting all
checking
of those
every
points.
box.
Yeah. Lack of support, high stress, and isolation, which obviously all of those are contributing factors as well. She had multiple high risk factors, repeated over several years. And then a little bit, obviously, we've talked about how this religious extremism intersection here enhanced and encouraged this distrust, this fundamentalist fear-based teaching about hell, sin, and being a godly mother, and that she believed she was a bad mother.
Every mom believes they're a bad mom. I'm so serious. Maybe not all the time.
Yeah, I've heard it a lot.
You will find yourself sitting there going, I think I'm doing this really wrong. That's just like, I think that's the only way you know that you're not a bad mom.
Is that
is that you think you are. I mean, like truly, I think, I don't know, that one to me just seems like so silly to have as some sort of risk factor or like, every mom feels that way.
Yeah. And for you to be, I mean, can't you see how this is like the perfect recipe for if you're being told that it is your responsibility to be a good mom? It's like, yeah, okay, well, if she had the support system, she would know from someone like you, right? Of like, wait, no, I've also thought that. it's not a moral failure.
No, that's what I'm saying. I keep thinking about Stephen King's Carrie because her mom,
Mm-hmm.
was like that, and it seems like an easy. Obviously, I know that's a fictional story, but it seems very easy to kind of go down that path of like, if we're talking about this and this is my reality, then yeah, I can see myself putting my kid in a prayer closet. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem that outlandish.
Yeah, whenever you take everything
Lord.
into consideration. I know.
Yeah.
So obviously the intersection of everything we're talking about and this religious pressure, this she has had this pre-existing vulnerability with this discontinuation of the medication, this poor systemic care. You add the rigid fear-based theology about motherhood, sin and hell, and then you add all this extreme distress and isolation, and you obviously have the perfect recipe for exactly what happened. So for parents and families who want to look out for red flags, if you know someone who is pregnant or has been pregnant, or is you want to have a family one day, you have friends that have kids or want to have kids, some of the red flags that you can look out for someone who is postpartum is that if they're talking about voices, visions, or messages that seem very real to them but not to anyone else, saying that God, angels, demons, and other forces are telling them to do specific things regarding their baby or themselves, a strong belief that the baby is evil or cursed or better off not here or not alive, they must be saved, any extreme paranoia, being convinced that someone is out to harm them or their baby or their family without any clear evidence, no sleep for days, pacing or constantly on edge, completely disorganized thinking. So stuff that doesn't follow a through thread, grounded in reality, and you can't follow conversations or care tasks very well. You see this represented in her not feeding her baby anymore. Like that she just couldn't eat, like you're not even able to provide in that way. Like you lose all access to like functioning
Or like caring
in
about
reality. Yeah.
taking,
Mm-hmm.
like caring about anything. I I keep going back to the insurance aspect of this because
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, and granted, I don't know how long this has been in place, but once you have delivered that child,
Mm-hmm.
you have a lot of appointments for that child.
Mm-hmm.
And every time they have an appointment, you, as the person that delivered them, have to fill out a little checklist. It's the same every time. And it's basically like, have you wanted to hurt yourself or someone else? Are you experiencing hallucinations on a scale of 1 to 10?
Mm-hmm.
How, do you feel this way or that way? And it's pretty basic and straightforward, but it's a screening for essentially like postpartum depression. And it's every time. And again, it's a lot of appointments. And I just keep thinking, like, granted, that may not have been the norm when she was having all these children, but even if it were, I'm finding myself wondering, did she have access? It sounds like she would have had like basic access because they did have insurance, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, were they going to those? It's just like all
I
these questions
know.
coming up of, were there even more than we already listed opportunities for someone to go, uh-oh,
Mm-hmm.
you okay?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much unknown here, and there's just so much room for speculation. That was my heart. Again, I know I say that so many times, but there's just so much room for people to fill in the blanks. These are warning signs that are serious. They may be less obvious, but they deserve immediate professional evaluation. These are sudden major personality changes postpartum. Like she's just not acting like herself at all. Intense black and white spiritual guilt. God hates me. I've ruined everything. I'm unforgivable. A lot of very guilt ridden or shame based um,
Extremes.
belief extremes, any obsessions about the Bible or spiritual teachings or any kind of ritual behavior that feels driven and frantic, that's not based in comfort. So it feels more
Mm-hmm.
like panicky, withdrawing from any support, not eating, not showering, not caring for the baby at all, and then repeated phrases about their state or any kind of like repeated negative, really intense phrasing about value, self worth, being a bad mom. So how we'll end cap this is what to do right away if you suspect postpartum psychosis. So for a parent, partner, a loved one, first of all, take it very seriously. Do not dismiss it as hormones or just that someone's feeling overwhelmed. remove immediate access to potential means of harm. So this can mean like any meds, sharp objects, without escalating any kind of confrontation. And then contact medical help, your OBGYN, your midwife, your psychiatrist, your primary care. One of them, all of them, if there seems to be any immediate danger, go to the ER. That's always just a quick, go-to. And stay with the person until medical intervention is involved. Do not leave them alone, especially with their children or their child
Even for
or their
an
baby,
hour.
even for an hour. Professional guidelines emphasize a rapid assessment and usually hospitalization to protect both the parent and the baby. And then I'll share in the show notes all the support hotlines that, for specifically for postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. There's all kinds of different medical interventions that are evidence-based that I won't go into, that I can also include in the show notes. But there is help available for this, and it happens way more often than you would think. And some non-pharmacological and relational supports are sleep protection. So again, if you know someone who has just had a baby, or friends, family, partner who want to have kids, them having sleep is obviously, as Heather knows way more than I do, is super important. Structured, compassionate support, regular check-ins, help with meals, chores, baby care. Like this friend that you said came by and was like, "Hey, go."
And I was gonna say, I for the same people that were saying, like, if you're not the one having the child, but you know someone that is, do not ask.
Yeah.
What can I do?
Just do
what
it.
do you need? Just do it. And if they're like, oh yeah, well, you can come over and hang out for a little bit. Do not go over there and hang out. Do not go over there and just look at the baby. Go over there and do their
Provide
laundry.
some unpaid labor.
Go over there and clean their house. Go over there and take that baby and say, take a shower. You stink. I love you.
Yeah.
Like, do not do that thing of like, let me know if you need anything, because you will never hear from them.
Yeah.
You will not.
That's the last thing that someone's going to do, is be like, oh, let me make a list of all the things I need help with, as they're like actively struggling.
So I actually made a list before I gave birth.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Of things that would help me if someone wants to help. And it really was like my laundry, and I made a how to use like my washing machine and like where my stuff was, and like taped it there.
Idea.
Like how to take care of my dogs, like, where their food is, what their feeding schedule is, whatever, how to take care of the chickens. I did all of that so that if someone came over and was like, what can I do? It didn't feel like, oh my God, it's going to be easier for me to just do it. Because it was like, it's taped.
It's on the fridge.
Yeah, truly, because it was like, while I could think, while I could sleep, that's what I was doing. Another thing too that I'll throw out there is, again, I know that it's a privilege. If you can have a therapist.
Yeah, that was the other thing too. Long-term therapy.
Have one before.
Yep.
Because what I told my therapist, especially because I was able to stay on my antidepressants, but at the time I wasn't sure if I'd be able to. Mm-hmm. And we had a lot of conversations about that. Mm-hmm. And I told her what I needed from her was basically like, please pay attention to me. Yeah. Like if there's even anything that you feel like is a little off, please pay attention to that. Yeah. And we kind of had our own sort of risk mitigating, right? And thankfully nothing came of that. But also I would encourage you, if you don't have one and you want to have a baby, set up that relationship with a therapist before you do all that, so that you feel comfortable saying, I'm not enjoying motherhood today.
I want to hurt myself or my child.
Or just like, is it okay that I'm not happy right now? Yes. Is this normal, or is this depression, right? Like be comfortable enough to ask those questions if you are someone that is comfortable enough to like feel those feelings. Because I have said things to her where she has said, okay. And I was like, are you sure? And she's like, okay, and I expected something else because I'm internalizing it, or I'm finding shame in it. And she's like,
know that like, if I, similarly from the other side of things, I'll have people say something to me and they're like, wait, you've heard that before? And I'm like, I heard that on Tuesday.
I've heard worse.
I heard it earlier today. Like, there's this something about it that is to normalize the experience is so important. And to feel like, oh yeah, it's okay that it feels that way.
And it is okay, for the love of God. Yeah, it really is.
It is okay. And as Heather's saying, long-term therapy is another non-medication related intervention. Also psychoeducation for partners and family. It is not the person who is having the child's responsibility to educate you on what it is that they're going through. Take the time to understand these things. And if you want to be a family, it is also your responsibility to look and do and learn and educate yourself on this stuff. Then there's, again, therapists, doctors. There's so many resources. If you have
really
a
good
phone,
birthing classes with
yeah,
doulas or midwives or whatever, like
Mhm.
participate, be present,
Mhm.
whether you're the one carrying or not. Like show
Yeah.
up because you're going to be postpartum too.
You're also going to be postpartum and sleep deprived. Another really important kind of final note here is that safe spiritual support. Like if you are a part of a community that is religious or spiritual in any way, having a trauma-informed spiritual leader. So someone who is a preacher, a chaplain, someone who does not shame, blame, or intensify fear of judgment, eternal damnation, hell, especially those kinds of things. Someone who's going to be compassionate and caring and understanding and supportive and holding of your experiences is so important. And you're not a bad mom for struggling. You're not
You're
a
a human
bad
being.
mom. You're a human being. And protecting a parent's mental health is protecting the child and everyone else. So with that being said, I really took my time here. So thanks for bearing
That's
with me,
okay.
everybody.
It was well done. I think that you took a lot of time on the things that needed to have the time taken. So well done.
Cool. Well, for those of you who have ever had children or will have children in the future, I hope that, you know, any of the resources listed help. And again, you're not a bad parent for struggling.
And you're always postpartum.
And you're always postpartum.
Just means post baby. So
We'll
feel your
see
feelings
ya.
all the time.
Feel your feelings, talk about it, have a good community, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.